people can make fun of things that they don't understand or believe, even when they are shown proof of its existence. And perhaps the more troubling that information is, the more they try to make fun of it, make light of it. Oh, you're silly for even bringing that up. And perhaps the prime example of this, absolutely case numero uno, is the gay frogs. I'm sure we've all heard the trendy normies talking about the stupid conspiracy theorists with their gay frog memes. Oh, Obama turned my frog gay with chemicals, man. Those stupid conspiracy theorists will believe anything. Yeah, like mainstream scientific research. This is not new. This is not shocking. This has been out there for a very long time. It has been consistently pointed out when people make fun of the silly gay frog meme. It's not gay frogs. It's male frogs being turned into female frogs. The real female frogs that can actually reproduce with female reproductive organs. Male frogs being turned into females by pesticides. Again, this comes from March 1st, 2010 from that kooky conspiracy theorist Live Science website. A commonly used pesticide known as atrazine can turn male frogs into females that are successfully able to reproduce, a new study finds. While previous work has shown atrazine can cause sexual abnormalities in frogs, such as hermaphroditism, having both male and female sex organs, this study is the first to find that atrazine's effects are long-lasting and can influence reproduction in amphibians. And it goes on to talk about the African clawed frogs that were the subject of this study. And yet, although this is, even if this wasn't creepy and disturbing for all of the ramifications of this research, it's still pretty amazing. It's pretty incredible that this exists. So I understand why people are incredulous about it at first. But when they know that this is actual, real science, this is a real study that's really been done on male frogs that are successfully turning into female frogs as a result of this pesticide, to still make fun of that as if that's a joke or something to be made light of is very bizarre. It's very interesting to watch that psychological mechanism at work. And I think of this because, of course, a new study has recently come out that you might have heard about. Study birth control turning male fish into females. Cleaning agents and contraceptives flushed down household drains are turning male fish into females, according to a new study. Professor Charles Tyler of the University of Exeter in Britain said male river fish are displaying more feminine traits, including reduced sperm and producing eggs, because of the chemicals being introduced to their environment. We are showing that some of these chemicals can have much wider health effects on fish than we expected, Tyler said, according to the Telegraph. Using specially created transgenic fish that allow us to see responses to these chemicals in the bodies of fish in real time, for example, we have shown that estrogens found in some plastics affect the valves in the heart. All right, well, of course, I'll throw the links into these studies so that you can go and read more about them, but this is talking about the endocrine disruptors, the estrogen-mimicking hormone-like chemicals that are found in increasingly large amounts of the plastics and other things that we consume on a daily basis. In this case, cleaning agents and contraceptives being fingered as the main culprits, but obviously chemicals, estrogens found in some plastics being part of the problem here. And again, this is not a new problem. This is not a new phenomenon. People cannot plead ignorance about this because this is a new study. It has been talked about at some length in the mainstream, in the MSM for years and years, but it's always reported in little drips and drabs of stories, one here and one there, that if you blink, you miss it and you'll never hear about it again. You can go to the WAPO, Democracy Dies in Darkness, where back in 2014, they had this story about more male bass switching sex, a strange fish story expands, which they followed up on, to their credit, in December of 2015. These fish started life as boys. Now scientists aren't sure what sex they are. Again, this research has been going on for a very long time. This phenomenon is not new. In fact, you can go back decades. This story coming from NBC News from 2004, male fish becoming female, ? Researchers worry about estrogen and pollutants in the river. Again, talking about more studies that were being done at that time on the estrogen mimicking compounds that somehow or other, wouldn't you know it, is somehow ending up in the plastics that are then finding their way into rivers and causing the fish to turn into these transgendered beings. And again, I think we all understand that this is a problem, even just from the marine ecology viewpoint. But obviously also the darker implication is, well, if this is what is happening to the fish that are being directly affected in the runoff in the rivers by these chemicals, well, how is this affecting humans in the long term in the aggregate? And you can turn to a number of sources for more information about this. But here is a pretty simple headline. Prevalent use of chemicals contributed to the increasing rate of male infertility, talking about the well-established fact that the sperm quality of human males has been decreasing around the globe for the last 50 years. This has been confirmed multiple times by multiple different studies. This one they're linking to is a study from the British Medical Journal, but this has been a documented phenomenon that the scientists have known about for decades now. Sperm quality has been declining for the better part of half a century, maybe over half a century at this point. And it has been talked about for decades. They're pointing to a 1993 BBC Horizon documentary that I haven't watched yet. I haven't seen this one, so I'm going to give it a viewing and let you know, but it's called Assault on the Male. And this, even in 1993, they were already talking about some of the chemicals, the estrogen-mimicking endocrine disruptors that are in the likes of chemicals like DDT, but also, of course, BPA, bisphenol A, which came into parlance in the past decade. And again, wouldn't you know it, of all of the different chemical compounds that they could use to line the lids of the tin cans that they used to put the soup in and things like that, or the plastic bottles, or even the little resin that they use to bond the ink to the paper on receipts is covered in bisphenol A. It's absolutely everywhere in the environment, or at least it was until a few years ago when they finally, after incredible amounts of evidence accumulated, they started trying to remove it here and there. Again, and it's an incredible story. So they point to this 1993 BBC Horizon documentary. They also point to the CBC News documentary called The Disappearing Male, which their link to it does not exist anymore, but I do have another link to it on Top Documentary Films I'm going to put in the show notes and exhort you to watch. This is an incredibly important documentary about an incredibly important subject. This one, I can't remember exactly what year this came out, but it was definitely over a decade ago now. I think early 2000s at the latest. And again, still at that time, talking about these estrogen-mimicking endocrine disruptors. There have been all sorts of research into this over the years, and it has even led to lawsuits between Sweden and the European Council about the labeling of bisphenol A as an endocrine disruptor and what that means and all of this. So it is something that has entered the public consciousness to some extent, and more research needs to be done. There are epidemiological studies that have shown that there is reason to be very concerned about these endocrine disrupting chemicals, but we don't know enough, and more research does need to be done. I'll throw just one link into one example, but there are many, many of these types of studies, epidemiological studies looking at the effects of these EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and saying, yeah, there seems to be some sort of reaction there, but it's extremely difficult to isolate specific chemicals and their effects in the environment overall over the course of a human lifetime, which is precisely why this is so important, because if there are massive changes coming that we're starting to see in the marine life, if we're having changes on this level in the marine life, is it possible that we'll have similarly disruptive changes in human life? It is not a laughing matter. It really is not something to laugh about. And yet, those silly conspiracy theorists with their gay frogs, it's just funny. Let's make a t-shirt about it because it's so funny. I don't know what to say about that phenomenon, except it's very real, and in many ways, it's even more disturbing than the story that they're making fun of, that are at least one form of natural human reaction to a very horrific, potentially very horrific story, is to laugh at it, even when it is shown to be the case, to just laugh it off. It's funny. It doesn't exist because I am laughing at it. It is literally a child's mentality, yet so much of the population gets trapped into it. Again, that's an interesting sociological observation for today, but if you want more information on the nuts and bolts of this story and the endocrine disrupting chemicals that are implementing the sterilization that has been lusted after by globalist elites, at least since the time of Charles Darwin's grandson, And if you want more information on that, I would suggest you start at episode 94 of my podcast, You Are Being Sterilized, where I did talk about this and did talk, for example, about that CBC documentary and some of the information in there. Lots of information to go through, and it's extremely important. So again, I realize a lot of my audience probably at least understands this story to some extent, but I'm guaranteeing you know at least one or two people who have this reaction to it. And I don't know, what's the best way, do you think, to actually put this information in front of someone like that, where they don't just laugh it off? I think that's an important question, and I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for that, but at any rate, I'd like to hear your experiences with these types of individuals and their particular psychological defense mechanisms. That's going to do it for today. Of course, all the links to all of